What's going on, YouTube world? It's Jay Coffee back at it with another one, man. And when I do videos, I'm always telling everyone, hey, jump in the comments, talk to me, let's talk. I want to hear from all the people, and I truly mean that, right? And shout out to SW68. He commented and is the inspiration behind this whole video as we are speaking about the Diddy case, but so much other issues tied in here. We're talking about Chuck Berry, boxer Jack Johnson from way back in the day, another boxer that you may see in the images here in the video who isn't really necessarily, this video is not about him. He just happens to be a boxer who got flucked over in the worst way, man, just framed for crimes that he did not commit. Is Ruben Hurricane Carter, RIP to him, as well as Jack Johnson, who was pardoned by Trump many years after his death. We're going to get all into it, but shout out to SW68 for engaging in the comments, man, and having us delving all the way into this. You know what I mean? As always, I'm just here to coffee talk it up with y'all. So let's do just that. Make sure to subscribe, hit the buttons. But this all comes from the Diddy case. As we know, the verdict came down, the more serious charges, the RICO-ish, saying that Diddy was running a criminal enterprise and there was all this foul, debaucherous rape and sex trafficking going on and whatnot. Like, no, he didn't get convicted of that. He got convicted on some lesser stuff, from my understanding. And once again, correct me wrong if I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Get in the comments. Let's talk. I don't claim to be the expert. I'm just a guy out here talking with y'all. And from my understanding, basically they were like, yo, he traveled around engaging in prostitution, which is illegal, and that's what he's convicted of. Isn't it so crazy the way times change and stuff right now, with like ex-workers and that being almost like a recognized occupation, almost damn near on the books, when really it's been an occupation that's always been around. Some say it's the earliest occupation that there ever was, dating back to biblical times. It's crazy, man, because if you guys remember, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, they said she was selling that thing, man. This is a crazy world we're living in, right? But the way this all went down is we were on Officer Whack 100. We can't figure out if he's an officer or a federal agent's page, the 100 show, where he was showing the federal guidelines sentencing charts, which is with the feds, it's a very specific, almost like a times table based on, different things like the individual's age, their former criminal record, are they already a felon, and it goes into these different boxes, and boom, that's what they get hit with. And there's a little bit of leeway where the judge can go to the max or to the minimum, but for the most part, the time is right there. And with Diddy, Wax take was that Diddy would be home in like 8 months, going to a halfway house when it's all said and done. Comment if you believe that that will be true, if you believe that that's going to be what it is, and just your thoughts on the verdict in case as well. Are you happy with the outcome? Do you think that that's just? Do you think that that's what it should be? Is what it is? But through all that, in the comments, someone wrote something about if he gets hit with the Mann Act, and I looked into it and I'm like, yo, the Mann Act, what is that? You know what I mean? And it referenced this term white slavery, and I'm like, wait, what are we talking about here? What is white slavery? What is the Mann Act? And you see it says the Mann Act, also known as the White Slave Traffic Act, is a U.S. federal law passed in 1910 that prohibits the interstate or foreign transportation of individuals for prostitution or debauchery or for any other immoral purpose, while intended to combat forced prostitution, which I guess the whole term white slavery is referent. That's what it's meant, right? Is forced prostitution. Its broad wording has led to its application in cases involving consensual activity. And basically, this comment that SW68 left was saying that way back in 1910, there was this boxer, Jack Johnson. What did they call him? Giant, right? He was a beast, just knocking fools out left and right. And I believe, I'm not 100%, was the first black heavyweight champion. And way back then, that the law, like as you heard in the definition there, has a broad wording, and the authorities used it in a way basically to charge the dude by saying, hey, you're messing with a white woman, we're gonna lock you the fuck up for that. But the story doesn't end there. There's so much more to the story. It's a pretty crazy story. We're gonna dive all the way into it. Chuck Berry, who you guys heard me mention, was someone else who was hit with the law. Although Chuck Berry, from my understanding, was messing with a 14-year-old girl, and that's some fucked up ish. I don't know. I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, that's how things were back in the day." That just sounds so twisted to me. That grown men were messing with little girls, and like I don't know. I knew a dude in Florida, right? No cap, man. Listen, his grandfather, and I'm not even trying to be funny, he had like a hair lip, and a lot of individuals within his family had like these defects, right? And I'm not saying everyone who has a hair lip has this, right? But just like many individuals in his family had birth defects. They were from like the sticks in Florida, and he was talking about he married his own cousin. It was the grandfather married his own cousin, and it was an arranged marriage, and the girl was underage or whatever. And I don't know, you know what I mean? This was stuff that came up in discussions back when R. Kelly was locked up. As my take on R. Kelly has continuously been, and this is me who is a huge fan of R. Kelly, where I say R. Kelly is a serial rapist violating little girls, you know what I mean? And there's people that say, well, what about the parents? The parents sold the little girls to R. Kelly and such and took payments, and I believe some of that to be true. I don't think that makes R. Kelly any better. I think that makes the parents evil sacks of garbage, just like R. Kelly. But those conversations came up when R. Kelly was under scrutiny prior to him being charged, tried, and convicted and locked up. And there's this whole thing going on now where he's filing these court motions that he was being denied the proper medical care, and that the feds are trying to kill him, and there's all this corruption that they're trying to cover up and all this. And through it all, there was a lot of discussions about a lot of other artists, white artists, that were said to be messing with underage girls as well. And I say, lock them the fuck up as well. You know what I mean? Elvis's name is a name that gets thrown in the mix, but then there's people that say, oh no, Elvis is from back in the day when the Chuck Berry stuff was going on, and those types of things weren't frowned upon and all this. It's just all crazy, man. You know what I mean? It's some real twisted ish to really sit down and talk about. And once again, I look forward to hearing from everyone in the comments talking about all this, but it's just like grown men should be messing with grown women, and that's just what it is, in my opinion. But we're getting a little bit off track on what I'm trying to talk about here, this Mann Act. It turns out, so the way that this guy brought up the Mann Act is WinWhack 100 was talking about this with his take on what Diddy would get hit sentencing wise. Someone in his comments said, like, if he gets hit with the Mann Act or something about the Mann Act, I believe they were trying to say that this was something that they could throw at him to enhance his sentence. But I don't think that it works that way. I believe he actually is charged and convicted with the Mann Act. As you see these reports here that say, yes, Sean Diddy Combs was convicted under the Mann Act. Specifically, he was found guilty of 2 counts of violating the Mann Act, which prohibits transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution. He was acquitted of more serious charges like sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. The Mann Act conviction stemmed from allegations that he flew his girlfriends and male ex-workers. Don't forget, y'all, we saw that Killer Cam interview with the Punisher that just blew my mind and probably others. Pause. In a fucked up way we didn't want to have our mind blown. Pause. Like, that shit was just crazy, man. Diddy coming out with the Muslim veil on, watching Cassie get oiled down and piped down and throwing money around. Like, that shit is crazy, man. Diddy is, I don't even know, man. This sounds like some old ritualistic secret society shit, man. And did you guys peep too when Whack 100 was talking about his badge? He was referencing his Masonic, his Mason homies. So I don't know, is Whack 100 an agent and a member of a secret society? Is he full-blown Boule member or whatever? I don't know. Y'all let me know what you guys think. But yeah, his girlfriends and male ex-workers around the country for paid actual encounters, according to a CNN report. And then again, a little more about the Mann Act. Once again, it was enacted in 1910, originally intended to combat human trafficking, but has been applied in various contexts over the years, which legal scholars say the law's language is somewhat vague, leading to both broad interpretations and controversial prosecutions. In Combs' case, the conviction is for the transportation for prostitution aspect of the law. He faces a potential sentence of up to 20 years with 10 years per count, though the final sentence will be determined by a judge. So again, comment with the, take a look at the chart, the federal guidelines, sentencing and all that, and people at Whack 100 is talking about with his prediction, and let me know what you think. And as far as before we dive a little more into this Jack Johnson story, once again, shout out to my guy SW68 tapping in. Again, coffee talking it up. That's what we do. That's what it's all about. We talk about music. We talk about news. We talk about sports, current events. We can get into some history stuff. We talk about a bit of it all over here. And you know what I mean? I always need you guys to hit the button, to hit the subscribe, but to engage in them comments more importantly than anything else. I need them interactions. That's why I do this. And just algorithmically, it helps out as well. But as far as the case went on, the stuff with Cassie, it was really crazy. It was like, damn, man, it really seemed like he was coercing her, extorting her mom, all this kinds of stuff like that. But the second witness, 50 Cent's baby's mom, it was like she flat out let it be known that she was all for the freak offs, where Cassie was saying, yo, I did it at first, but then anytime I spoke about not doing it, like, he got all mad. I got afraid to mention it to him. You know what I mean? And he's playing the Grinch that stole Christmas over at Kid Cudi's house, violating Kid Cudi's dogs, throwing Molotov cocktails up in the whip and all kinds of stuff. Daphne Joy was like, hey, I was all for it because I wanted him to spend more time with me over Young Miami. She was like really feeling Diddy like that and would do anything to get more time with him. And at the end of the day, that kind of was a really bad, I believe was, legally speaking, strategic wise for the prosecutors, with them trying to hit him with the whole racketeering thing. Daphne Joy's testimony did not match what Cassie was talking about, in which of it being like a, the pattern of abuse and stuff like that, where she was all for it. She wanted to get more time with Diddy by any means necessary. But the fact that she's an ex-worker, I guess that's where they got him on the Mann Act on both counts, but not the RICO stuff, if you smell me. But getting into Jack Johnson and the white slavery law that brought down Jack Johnson is still in effect. This, legal statute that was put into effect way back in 1910 when the world was a very, very different place. The same law is still in effect, still has that same broad language. And it says the Mann Act was designed to prevent human trafficking, but used to punish interracial relationships. So check it out. He was known as the Galveston Giant, a boxer who fought his way towards the first world heavyweight title held by an African American. But in 1912, so that's just 2 years after this law was put into effect, Jack Johnson became something else, a wanted man, accused of violating the Mann Act, which forbade transporting a woman across state lines for quote unquote immoral purposes. Mann's relationships with the white women got him in trouble with the law. In 2018, 72 years later after his death, Trump posthumously, so after his death, he had been dead for 72 years, pardoned Jack Johnson. So officially under the books, he's an innocent man. And I wonder if his family ended up suing and getting a little payday because, like I said, I'm not going to just give the whole story out. We're going to dive more into it. It's a crazy story, the way it all went down. He just didn't go out like, okay, lock me up. You know what I mean? Just like we're talking about another boxer, total different situation. Like I said, I just included some of the imagery because it made me think of another boxer, Reuben Hurricane Carter, who went to jail behind some bullshit and was freed and spent the rest of his life trying to free other innocent people. He was all for the cause. R.I.P. Reuben Hurricane Carter. They did that man foul locking him up like that, man, and he spent a lot of time in prison, you know. But it goes down in the books that Jack Johnson was innocent. And peep this too. The pardon took place during an Oval Office ceremony during which Trump referred to Johnson as enduring what many view as racially motivated injustice. And also, President Obama's administration had considered pardoning Johnson too, but declined to do so due to allegations that Jack Johnson physically abused women. So Obama was going to do it. He didn't. Trump got in and said, hey, we're going to do it. But people, Johnson wasn't the only person affected by the Mann Act, also known as the White Slave Traffic Act of 1910. The law was invoked over and over again to punish black men for their relationship with white women, affairs that challenged the racial status quo. Rooted in fears of women's growing mobility and racist characterizations of the actual appetites of non-white men, the law was designed to protect women against the supposed scourge of quote-unquote white slavery, a term used to refer to sex trafficking in the early 20th century. Though it's been significantly amended since the 1910, the law, which was also used against figures like Chuck Berry, is still on the book. So again, Chuck Berry, it killed his career too. They'll dive a little more into that in this article in which I'm busting this down for y'all. Like I said, there was a lot of talk. He was messing with really young girls with boxer Jack Johnson, in which we're speaking of. I don't believe he was with an underage girl. I believe the woman was a grown woman. But we'll get more into it. As women gained more autonomy at the end of the 19th century, the concept of white slavery sparked a public panic. Reformers worried that women who appeared in public without men were being forced into prostitution by gangs who trafficked in young girls. This supposed X trade was characterized as a quote-unquote curse to humanity in books like Fighting the Traffic in Young Girls or War on the White Slave Trade. Now, I'm not familiar with either of those books, but just to give a little context, not like I was around back then, but anyone out there, older, if you have any insight into this, leave it in the comments once again, as well as anything else we're talking about. You got to realize back in the day, there were times like aside from just women interracial relationships being frowned upon in racist white supremacists and police force trying to lock black dudes up just for messing with a white woman. You know what I mean? You also have the fact how they're talking about just seeing a woman in public alone. They're like, oh, someone's pimping her, a gang's got hold of her. Like, you know what I mean? There was a time where they were like, women shouldn't even work. Women should, you know what I mean? It was just a totally different time, period. The way society was. I'm just throwing that out there. The popular tract warned parents about the supposed dangers of living or working in cities. So right there, you hear working in cities. You know what I mean? Like they were like, yo, women are going to get these jobs. They're going to get abducted and raped and forced into this X trafficking and such. But I will say, totally aside from anything we're talking about here, man, X trafficking, as far as the internet goes, and again, this has nothing to do with what we're speaking of in context of this situation, Jack Johnson, any of this. Like, there's some fucked up ish going on. Parents, be careful on the internet, man. There's digital pimping going on. There's sick fucks that target underage girls' social media profiles. It's disgusting. It's disturbing, and it's downright scary. And Homeland Security and law enforcement isn't doing quite as much, nearly as much as they should, or you would think that they are. It's fucked up, man. It's twisted. But getting back to what we were talking about, Jack Johnson. And again, that little side convo was not tied to what we're speaking of in reference to this story. That was just what's going on current day with these digital pedos, you know what I mean, trying to violate underage girls. Be careful, everyone. Johnson, then one of the most famous black men in the U.S., was one of the law's first victims. When he beat a white boxer, undefeated heavyweight champ James J. Jeffries in a highly publicized bout in 1910, it triggered race riots. It also made law enforcement take a closer look at Johnson, who was known for his flamboyant behavior and lavish spending. So right there, he's the man. He beats this undefeated white champ. Now all of a sudden, he's a target. And then on top of it, he's spending money. He's enjoying his hard work, his status as the champ. He was a target. You know, you travel around. We've seen this, like, for instance, in like the Ray Charles movie, or just any black celebrity back then. I mean, in many instances, this can still happen today. I'm just saying, like, the way the world was back then, a lot of black celebrities, black athletes, like, it was, you know, the more success they had, the more of a target that they were. Where were we? This behavior had long ranked those who thought an African American man should just know his place and stay in it. And Johnson's open relationships with white women were considered a slap in the face to racial norms. So there you hear it as well. He was messing with white women and wasn't trying to hide it. He's like, fuck y'all, I'm the champ. I got me a white girl. I'm spending money. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. I'm winning. Let's continue on. Then in 1912, prosecutors got their chance to enforce the Mann Act when Lucille Cameron's mother accused Johnson of kidnapping her daughter and transporting her across state lines. Though Johnson was in a consensual relationship with Cameron and would soon marry her, prosecutors used the accusation as a pretext. As Chicago police arrested him for kidnapping, federal prosecutors assembled a grand jury to investigate his relationships with white women. Now, I want to point out here, too, that research shows that this woman, Lucille Cameron, was 18 years old when they met and began their relationship. So she was indeed a grown woman. As you're going to find out, though, there was reports that she was a prostitute or whatever, you know, but did they just throw that title on her or not? I don't know. You know what I mean? But I'm guessing, and we're going to find out, that was probably part of the way the federal grand jury strategically threw the Mann Act on Jack Johnson, the Galveston giant. There was just one problem, and that was for the feds, right? Cameron, who is in love with Johnson, refused to say anything that incriminated him. Then prosecutors found out Cameron had been a prostitute, past tense, which undermined her credibility as a witness. They dropped the case temporarily, but not before the public caught wind of it. A historian, L. Tony Gilmore writes, as historian L. Tony Gilmore writes, the public felt that the champion was such a bad character that it was their obligation to destroy him by any means available. So it just, again, shows you, not like this isn't something people don't know, that the world was very different back then, but just those words really, you know what I mean, put it together. Like, do you hear that? The public looked at this guy like he has to go down, he has to pay, he has to be destroyed. And his girlfriend, who would become his wife, I guess, had been a prostitute. And they used that to say, well, hey, even though you don't want to say anything, you have no credibility because you used to be a prostitute, according to, you know, word. I don't know how exactly they deemed that she was had been a prostitute, if she had been arrested and convicted or what. Prosecutors, and some I just want to throw out there too. There's a lot of people that are charged with things and beat the case. Just throw that out there. An allegation and a conviction. Not that this isn't common sense, but people will often throw together things and just speak of arrests, and you know, that's not a conviction. Now, there could be, in different, once again, total side conversation of what we're speaking of, there can be instances where there's like arrests of a pattern where someone beats a case multiple times and then are convicted of it, and it may have people look back on the other instances in which they beat cases of like, yo, were they really innocent or whatever. But I mean, it really has nothing to do with what we're speaking of here. Let me carry on. I have a tendency to sidebar a bit. Once again, I'm Jay Coffee Talk. I talks it up. I coffee talk. You know what I mean? Just another quick side note. My first ever foray in wanting to pick up a device and do content or YouTube was to do a podcast. You know what I mean? Be a voiceover artist type deal and be a podcaster. That was what you know, I was fucking with when it comes to creating content. But let's continue on. Prosecutors soon hit on another excuse to enforce the act. Johnson's past relationship with Belle Schreiber, a white prostitute who agreed to testify against him. Now, ain't that crazy? The one girl that won't testify against him, they say, yo, you were a hooker, you have no credibility. But the one that will testify against him, she's a hooker, her word's good as gold. Ain't that crazy how that works? Schreiber's testimony, along with Johnson's recent marriage to Cameron, convinced the jury that he'd run afoul of the Mann Act and taken her across state lines for, quote unquote, immoral purposes. An all-white jury convicted him, and he was sentenced to a year and a day in prison. Now, check this out. Like I said, this is an interesting story, right? Just like the boxer Reuben the Hurricane Carter fought and freed himself. Just like Muhammad Ali, another, you know, prominent, you know, strong, powerful black man, you know, who blazed many trails back in the day. You know what I mean? Cassius Clay, nah, that's Muhammad Ali, right? He got drafted to go to war. He said, I ain't fighting that war. That's a white man's war. I ain't fighting people of color. Fuck y'all. He went and did his time. Jack Johnson had an ace up his sleeve as well, like these other boxers. You know what I'm saying? They just had a fighting spirit. He said, fuck that. I ain't going to no prison for a year and a day. Defiant, Johnson refused to serve his sentence. He went to Canada with Cameron, then fled to Europe and lived abroad for 7 years. Gilmore notes that as a result of the case's notoriety, lawmakers introduced bills to ban marriage between black and white people in multiple states. Though none passed, the attempts illustrate how preoccupied the nation was with Johnson's interracial relationship and his supposed quote-unquote crime. They were trying to throw laws together, everything. He evaded going to prison. Like, he wasn't going out without no fight. You know what I mean? This guy could fight in the ring, but he could fight outside of the ring too. He wasn't going out, like, it wasn't going to be easy. You know what I'm saying? It's a wild story. So he goes to Canada, gets to Europe. They try to throw these laws in the books. They don't work. They're mad, right? They can't get Jack Johnson. Now listen to this. He even continued to fight while on the run as the champ, right? Johnson spent some of his time in exile defending his heavyweight title, but was defeated by white boxer Jess Willard in a bout in Cuba in 1915. Eventually, Johnson did return to the U.S., and he was forced to serve his sentence in 1920, which again was a year and a day. So he went on the run for what, almost 10 years. After his release from prison, he tried to revitalize his career, but struggled to remain relevant. Apologies, y'all. Meanwhile, the Mann Act remained in effect, which it still is today. I guess it's been amended to a degree, but those are the two counts in which Diddy was convicted of, y'all. During the first half of the 20th century, the law was primarily used to prosecute men crossing state borders with underage women or during premarital or extramarital affairs. In 1944, for example, Charlie Chaplin, remember him, man? Yo, was Charlie Chaplin a Nazi? That man had the Nazi mustache, y'all. Was prosecuted and eventually acquitted. So Charlie, with his Nazi mustache, did beat the case for buying a train fare for his girlfriend, Joan Barry, with the intent of transporting her across state lines within the context of a consensual relationship in 1941. I don't know if that girl was underage or what. The law also remained a potent tool against black men whose relationships with white women infuriated white supremacists. In 1959, Chuck Berry was prosecuted under the Mann Act for employing and allegedly instigating a actual relationship with a 14-year-old white girl, Janice Escalante. A Mann Act accusation and 3 trials followed. If you've seen the movie, what was that, Cadillac Records? Very good movie. Comment if y'all mess with Cadillac Records. You know, and just something to put out there with a lot of these movies. Even the Hurricane. Just any movie that is based on true events, they take liberties with certain things. Not everything is always 100% accurate. I do believe the what's it called? The Hurricane was pretty accurate. I could be wrong. Cadillac Records, do you believe that it was an accurate film, as in your opinion? You know what I mean? Where were we? It said, he said he felt, this was of Chuck Berry. He said he felt hounded. Oh, but they showed him in the movie being caught in a car with underage girls. I don't know if that actually happened or not. He said he felt hounded by the police for his association with white women. In the trials, which took place before white male juries, the prosecution depicted Mr. Berry as an actual predator, and the outcome seemed to some degree racially motivated. However, However, the outcome of the trials was also predicated on Berry's alleged involvement with the teenage girl, a relationship that haunted his later years. For years, Berry denied that he went to prison. It plucked up his career. You know what I mean? Chuck Berry was slick too. Did you guys ever see where he would go and say, I'm a country, as very racist times, he would go certain places and say, I'm a country artist. And he would say that he was Indian and different stuff like that, trying to just get in where he could, wherever, to perform. Like, hey, I'm Chuck Berry. I just want to rock out. You see the footage of him with John Lennon and Yoko Ono too. You know what I mean? But ultimately, that killed his career. But these days, the Mann Act is still in force, though it's been stripped of gender-specific language and updated to clarify that it's only applicable to actual activity that's considered criminal. That put a stop to its use to punish extramarital affairs, quote unquote, immoral conduct like premarital acts and interracial relationships. But though its meaning has changed, the legacy of the Mann Act persists. Today, Johnson wouldn't be prosecuted or convicted under the law for daring to have an open relationship with a white woman. But though he's been pardoned, the effect of the trial and conviction on his life, career, and legacy can't be undone. Whether the law was applied fairly or not, prosecutors succeeded in punishing a prominent African American man for his love life. So there y'all have it, man. That's quite the story, you know. He didn't go out with a fight. He went on the run. He made it out of the country. He defended the title while on the run. I'm surprised they just didn't strip him of the title, you know, but they didn't. He ended up losing it in Cuba. And, you know, this is the same law, the Mann Act, in which Diddy was convicted of 2 counts. It's a pretty crazy story, and a true story at that. History, American history. And once again, SW68, I appreciate you for tuning in, for joining the discussion. As always, as I was saying previously in the beginning of the video, it's all about hearing from the people. You know what I mean? Who would have thunk that just us going over what Officer or Agent Whack 100, you know what I mean, proud Masonic Lodge member, was giving his prediction on Diddy sentencing, and something someone said about the Mann Act, if they were going to hit him with it like it was a enhancement thing. Like, no, that is indeed what he is convicted of. And then SW68 filling us in on the true origins of this federal statute, federal law. It's crazy, you know what I mean? And here we are, we got this video. So that's gonna do it. Comment your thoughts about it all. The Diddy case, how much time you think he's gonna get. Officer / Agent Whack 100's prediction. Let's discuss it all in the comments below. With that being said, it's Coffee signing out. Much love, and I'm gonna get with y'all on the next one. Peace.